Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce, and a Greg Terry Experience video with Greg Terry. Hello Greg,
and I'm here with Johnny Pierce. The only issue today, JP, is you got your hat on, so I can't see your glowing golden dome, but everything's good.
I didn't want to blind anyone, mate.
You're looking good and dapper there in that Ukrainian hat, buddy. Thank you.
Fab. So, my good man.
A lot to talk about.
There is a lot to talk about, and we'll probably start with NATO. And
okay.
Please forgive me, my audience, because there will be elements that I've already talked about in my last video. I did a NATO debrief video, but I think there are some pretty extraordinary things that were said by Trump, and by extraordinary, they should be really ordinary things if we were looking at any other human being. But coming from Trump, it's like, oh my goodness, he's finally doing empathy. He's finally saying things that we should expect from a NATO leader, right? I know what I'm going to say. I've got lots to say on NATO. What are your general thoughts about how the NATO summit played out, and who benefited, and what are the wins, what are the losses?
First of all, if you're referring to the empathy there, I would assume you're talking about the Ukrainian reporter from Warsaw who was actually able to tell her story and give a personal touch to Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And he was obviously touched by that story. Mm-hmm. So we have to take that as a positive. Now, where that goes from there, but it at least gave some reality to him that he would never get by listening to his circle around him of his advisors into his ears about the war in Ukraine. So in my opinion, out of everything that happened, that was the number one moment, because it was undeniable. It was from a source. He was able to have a mom and a wife, a reporter who was speaking to him intelligently, articulately, because all he likes to do, of course, as we know, we're watching the CNN debacle right now, is trash media. And I'll be honest with you, I was very thankful that he was respectful to her and moved. So for me, out of everything NATO, because right now in the United States, and I know I've got a lot of Americans in here watching, it's 2:00 Eastern Standard, but I saw some guys on the other side of the planet up at 4 a.m. So thank you if you got up early to listen to Johnny and I. We appreciate that. The rest of the stuff we're trying to process through over here, man, and it's the daddy statements, the Rute text message that Trump shared and all of that. It was preparatory. I actually was going to add this to my video last night at midnight, but I was paying attention to the Kirill Dmitriev messages and tweets of the throne there, prepared for Trump and NATO, doing everything they can to get him on board. And in the big scheme of things, through it all, I don't think it could have went any better at all, because not only did he not go out of his way to make a fool of himself, he was restrained. He was able to have a private conversation with Zelensky that didn't have to happen. He had other conversations with like Erdogan, and he had an emotional moment with that reporter. And he leaves there feeling like, NATO's stepping up now. The nations are coming up to what he's been looking for. So for me, I'm in complete agreement with you that it couldn't have went any better, except I would have loved to have seen stronger language against Russia.
Yeah, but I talked about. Sorry, carry on.
No, but hey, overall, not too bad. Not too bad.
So I 1000% agree with you. Apart from, I won't say that interaction with the reporter was the number one excerpt from that, and I'll play you the excerpt. I think it was even more important than that, but it's number two. It was just, so he showed empathy, and it showed exactly what you say. But you can say this for every decent statement he made during NATO, which is, as soon as you take him out of his circle and into the zone of other people who have expertise in their areas, and he is given objective truths, or information that isn't fed through a lens to him, then he has a better chance of actually concluding sensibly and saying sensible things. And that's exactly what happened. As you say, first-hand information, and interacts on a one-to-one with this reporter, has empathy, which is very rare for him to exhibit, and just says pretty normal things. I mean, it's a point where he says what any other leader would say, but we're like, I'm congratulating him. Hey, what an absolute legend. When actually that should just be completely par for the course for any decent human being. So with regard to laying it up, so we're talking about Rutte and the message that was published by Trump, and that was a real goodness me, you blow your trust there by doing something like that. But that cringe message was functional, and it did. I mean, sadly, that's how everyone has to treat Trump. And the success of
played it perfectly.
Yeah, the entire success of NATO was, can we get Trump marginally back on board? And that happened. And so when it comes to the language, so if you look at the 5 paragraphs of this statement of NATO that they brought out at the end, they very little reference to Ukraine and Russia. However, everything else, if you understand that all other things in the statement are contingent upon the minor bits on Ukraine, then actually it's all right. So all the other stuff to do with 5% and 3.5% and 1.5% and unity and blah blah blah, that is all because of Russia. Everyone knows that. So it doesn't matter what's stated on in public. Like, all those nations know what's going on, and so I take that into account, and I'm not so worried about the rhetoric at the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I will tell you what this is completely opposite of the other major event happening in the world, which is Iran and Israel and China. And I think it's obvious now, even after this NATO meeting, that we can see some long-term support coming for Ukraine. I don't know how it's going to look and how it's going to unfold, but this war, Ukraine's fighting, and I believe that Zelensky left there with some encouragement. He's had enough discouragement over the last few weeks. So this was an encouraging moment for Ukrainians, had some hope in it, and we'll take it. We'll absolutely take it.
I even heard a rumor today. I've not seen substantiation of it, but a rumor that 5 Patriots via Israel through the US are going to Ukraine, which has been on the cards potentially. We have a claim that at least 1 is already in or on the way to Ukraine. We'd heard that previously from the ambassador, then the IDF denied it, and then Zelensky confirmed at least 1. But I did see a rumor that 5 could be on the way, but I no confirmation of that. But
the bottom line is they need them. We all know that. But I was on some information this morning, and Russia's getting ready to go to another phase of air attacks with these shaheeds and these decoys and this control that they will begin to display with the shaheeds from bases inside Russia. Plus, they've modified some of the decoy drones that are basically pieces of plywood flying around that are looking like a drone and being taken out of the air. And that's not taking a Patriot, of course, but it's still it's taking air defense. So
yeah,
as much as we're so thankful, and I can tell you right now, Ukraine's got stuff coming in the pipeline, and I keep saying this, for fall of 2025, which is just a few months away, that will be an answer to this. In addition to that, if you guys are reading or you're seeing videos or you're watching Johnny or myself or many, many others that support Ukraine, and we say, hey, Ukraine's got a new missile, it's already been field tested, and they're getting ready to adjust their strategy for strikes, guys, it's already been happening. So make sure you understand, like, a lot of the technology that is not even out yet. And Eugenia and I were fortunate to be able to see some of that and hear about it in Kyiv a couple of months ago, but it's not coming to the battlefield until the fall. So there's so much in the pipeline that Ukraine has. And Johnny, I can remind you right now of how ingenious Ukrainians are just in general. When you and Pierre decided to break our battle bus and Zhenya got out and fixed it with what was, we needed a full service shop, and he basically took a screwdriver and went back there and fixed that door where Pierre was sitting, if you remember that. And we were all amazed that he was able to fix it and didn't even have the right tool. That's Ukrainian ingenuity. So it's coming.
I want to return to this whole subject in a bit later, because I still want to talk a little bit about NATO, if you will excuse me, if that's okay.
Please do, man.
I want to play you this video because this is the one I think was the single most important. It's only 48 seconds long. This to me is a single most important video or excerpt from the NATO summit. Hopefully you can hear this. Let me know if you can't.
When I came here, I came here because it was something I'm supposed to be doing, but I left here a little bit differently. I said, I watched the heads of these countries get up, and the love and the passion that they showed for their country was unbelievable. I've never seen quite anything like it. They want to protect their country, and they need the United States. And without the United States, it's not going to be the same. It was really moving to see it. And when I was around that table, it was a nice group of people. It was great. And I left here differently. I left here saying that these people really love their countries. It's not a ripoff. And we're here to help them protect their country. When I came,
I can't tell you how freaking important that is, Greg. Now, I wanted, do you mind if I break it down a little bit? And
please,
I know I did this
let's break it down, because I'm ready to go with you on that statement right there. So you roll, and then I'll give you American perspectives. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. So this first bit was fascinating.
I came here because it was something I'm supposed to be doing.
Okay. So that is fascinating. So basically, we need to understand who Trump is, and the fact that he will, well, the speculation that he will be projecting who he is onto everyone else. So who he is someone that doesn't do alliances, that sees everything transactionally. As we talked about before, it's a zero-sum game, and you doing well is me doing badly. And so he doesn't understand NATO, doesn't understand the EU, and he doesn't understand alliances in general. So he thinks of, you know, going to NATO is something I have to do, but it's not something I want to do, because I don't understand why it really exists, because I don't really understand the threat that Russia is to NATO countries and to Ukraine. I just see this as us giving a load of money to Ukraine, blah, 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 blah. And so therefore this is just a part of my duty, but I don't really get it. Yeah.
So just to confirm what you're saying there, we can all know and understand that Trump is uneducated and unread, but when he experiences something, he then will have a response to it, and that's typical. You're right. He probably doesn't even know what NATO is, what purpose it serves, but he got in there, and let me tell you what he saw. He saw an environment with those European leaders that is even completely opposite of the environment, that he has created in Washington, D.C. And because of that, he's going, okay, there's something different here. Now, my concern for that is he goes right back home and cranks up the tweet machine again, blasting New York City. Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
let me keep you positive while you can, because I'm with you. I'm
hold that thought, because what he hold the idea of what he does when he goes back, because that's a whole other conversation that I think we need to have. So with regard to this, like he's basically not understood really, I don't think, the principles of NATO, and just sees it as a kind of obligatory duty that he doesn't. So he doesn't get that other leaders are so concerned about the threat that Russia is and the war in Ukraine, that they want to go to the NATO summit in order to make sure that things are put in place. Like they're not going because they have to, they're going because they have to, right? And so we had in the House of Commons today, Keir Starmer, the leader, the Labour Party and leader and Prime Minister, was at the what's called Prime Minister's Questions, and the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, said, came out, and basically it's quite confrontational. And she said, "Oh, it's good to see you here because you've been I see you've been evading Prime Minister's questions for 2 weeks." And he went, I'm paraphrasing, but he went, "Oh, no, no, no." And this came from the heart. You could tell he was annoyed. He's like, "I've been to the G7 meeting and I've been to the NATO summit, and these things are freaking important. And I have been doing serious work at a historic summit to make sure that the security of this country is consolidated going forward, etc., etc." The point is that to me spoke of a leader that knew what had to happen at NATO and at G7 in order for his country to be safer and for the world to be safer. So there was a higher level of objective for going to these meetings, whereas Trump says, "Oh, I was just going there because I had to," type thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like so Trump then goes to NATO, meets these people who are all going there because they are driven to go there out of this desire to work on behalf of their people, Europe as a whole, and the Ukrainians. And he sees that, and he starts to understand cooperation. He starts to understand the rationale of NATO existing, and he starts to understand, key here, that it's not a ripoff. So I'm just going to play this out and get your opinion on what I've just said, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
But I left here a little bit differently. I said, I watched the heads of these countries get up, and the love and the passion that they showed for their country was unbelievable. I've never seen quite anything like it.
Because he's projecting himself.
They want to protect their country, and they need the United States. And without the United States, it's not going to be the same. It was really moving to see it. And when I was around that table, it was a nice group of people.
Nice group of people. So being really positive about the European people who he'd leaders who otherwise.
I'm about to fall off my stool. Because I can't believe.
And I left here different.
Yeah.
That you have made so many hopeful statements in the last 5 minutes.
I left here saying that these people really love their countries. It's not a ripoff, and we're here to help them protect their country.
And he also understands the role that the United States plays within that framework. So,
all right.
Am I drawing too much? That's 48 seconds, and I just think that was fundamentally huge.
This is why I go back to the #1 story, not being that video, although it can be 1A or it can be your one. That's fine. It was the interaction with the Ukrainian reporter, because he needed to be moved emotionally. Now, here's the problem, though. It's who has his ear, and it's like what he sees. And okay, I'm going to give a personal example, and we've got great people in here watching. I want to thank you all from all over the world joining this live stream. My mother-in-law is 81 years old, and she has early onset dementia. So whatever she is looking at is what she focuses on. Whatever is around her is what she focuses on. And that's just a part of it. And I believe we got some of that reality out of Trump in regard to those statements that you are viewing as positive, which I do as well. Listen, the opposite could have been, what a bunch of Looney Tunes. Screw you guys. I'm out of here and we'll never see you again. That's what could have happened. Yeah. But we got the opposite. So we have to take it as a positive. Yeah. Completely agree. Now we have to allow time to tell what will unfold. And that's why I don't like what he does when he gets back home. But with that said, this goes back to the Ruti tweets. The ground was prepared for him. You have to also realize that he is coming off of one of the most high, I don't know how to say this better, but amped up situations when the world looked at him and you had the strike on the Iranian nuclear enrichment sites. He's on a high. I remember when I went live that night and it had just happened. Literally, I mean, I literally it just happened. I think maybe I was the first guy to go live about it, honestly. And I had everything already set up because I had a feeling. I had done a video with Jonathan Fink on Friday, and I said, you know what? I think they're going to attack this weekend. So I was really watching, and I happened to be sitting here in my studio, and Trump tweeted, it's done. And I would look for one confirmation from Israel, and I said, it's really happened. I went live immediately. And Gertis came on, and we were talking about it and heard Trump's statement, all of this. But literally, I was so amped up from that I could not sleep the entire night. And I am not exaggerating. I was up all night with adrenaline because I saw our world changing, and I was able to share it with people. And it was like my largest live stream. There's 29,500 people watching simultaneously, and I'm giving them updates from the IDF and videos from inside Iran, and we're watching everything. And I felt like I was making a difference in the world, giving people an inside look as to what was happening to the best of my ability and truthfully. And when it was over, I couldn't even go to sleep all night. And the next day I was playing music, and I just went on. Now, forget that. Now you're the president of the United States who ultimately orders that. And you're on this high, and then you come to NATO and you're being gloated over, you know, daddy's breaking up the fight, all of those things. So I get it. I do get it. That's his world. Now, what comes from that, we'll really see in a week or two or three. But we have to take the victories where we can, and this definitely was. But I think he was moved emotionally by seeing the unity of the European leaders, and he was moved emotionally, maybe even by seeing their love for Zelensky, the way they embraced him or shook his hand, or I don't know.
And the other key, so he also said Zelensky was a good guy. So that's the first time we've heard that. So I don't know if you heard that. So
are we really going to say 2 weeks? I'm sorry, I just saw that go back in the chat. Yeah. Yes, we're going to say 2 weeks on this one. Let's see what happens in 2 weeks.
So so I will say that you're absolutely right, Greg. Now, that's me being as positive about Trump as you will ever hear me, right? And that all that kind of stuff was. I'm only talking about it and going into granular detail about it because it's so unusual for Donald Trump to say that kind of stuff. That should be just par for the course for any other world leader, right? So, you know, it's all about the context here. But Trump is only as good as his last 24 hours.
Correct.
You know, he has a tendency for this recency bias. So whoever is the last person that speaks to him, that's what he kind of regurgitates. And the reason he does so well at these, well, not so well, the reason that he speaks something approaching sense at this NATO summit and after the Vatican when he met with Zelensky is because he met one-to-one. And here he's in rooms without his Grimer worm tongues whispering in his ear. He is able to exist without that lens attached to his eye, and so this is when he's most likely to say stuff like that. If he goes back to the United States and then surrounds himself with those same people, then it could just take 2 or 3 days and he's right back to tweeting that Zelensky's a dictator and blah blah blah, and that wouldn't surprise me one iota. So I fully predict that he will at least backslide a little bit on this high. Not that this is a high. I mean, we're talking about just small overtures towards being positive over Ukraine. But,
all right, well, let's take it to the minute right now. So I have and I don't know. I can only talk about what I see and witness. But 5 hours ago, Donald Trump tweeted, "The NATO summit yesterday is great." Thank you. This is 5 hours old. The most unified and productive in history. Great. A wonderful day with incredible and caring leaders. The agreed to 5% gives NATO real power. So what you have here is now after the time, that says 20 minutes is 5 hours ago, is you have a mixture now of the emotional side and the transactional side coming together. So yeah, I saw good leaders, I saw unity, and I'm getting what I want, which is 5%. So
but the thing is that 5%, I mean 3.5% on raw kind of materials, if you like, the defense material, and then 1.5% on infrastructure and cyber and other kind of associated stuff. This is good for Ukraine, right? And so my thoughts were he probably sounded the 5% sometime back whenever he did as a way to try and undermine NATO, right? In a way of trying to get, thinking it was so unrealistic that no one would be able to, he's moved the goalpost, no one would be able to achieve that. And then NATO falls apart and say, well, you guys aren't willing to do this. 5% for the US is undoable. I mean, that's like another $400 billion, right? Because they already spend a huge amount, and they've got, well, and they've got more, they've got a huge GDP, right? So, you know, that's a really big call for everyone involved. But the fact that NATO then turned around and said, do you know what, we've done that, means that, you know, he's got nothing to complain about. You can't push it any higher than that. It's absolutely ridiculous. And so he's got what he wanted. And actually, NATO also gets what it wants, which is countries to take these threats super seriously and prepare for them. And so, you know, that's a kind of a win-win, although, you know, one has to worry where this money's going to come from.
I think we're going to see, and we just need to go with what we got and be thankful for it right now. Time will tell. So let me share that screen to you. This is just 4 hours ago. This is a truth or tweet. You should see it down there, that Donald Trump shared. It's really interesting. It's okay for him to share things. I assume he has Ralph Reed's permission. I'm assuming he had Ruti's permission to share the tweet, because they get boiling mad when anybody else shares anything. So okay, but I don't, that's a different topic. But so this leads me, here's Ralph Reed. If you guys do not know who Ralph Reed is, he is the chair of the Republican Party in the state of Georgia. He ran for lieutenant governor. So he's a Republican power guy in Georgia. And we get this message: thank you, in all caps, for your bold decision to strike the nuclear sites in Iran. Obama and Biden allowed the Iran, the bloodiest regime in the region, to kill, maim, threaten, and terrorize with impunity, and did nothing. They subsidized Iran's terror and nuclear ambitions. You had the guts to do what no other president would do. I believe God spared your life in Butler, Pennsylvania, and again at Trump International, so you could be here today to make this historic decision. It was a Reagan-esque and a Churchillian moment. America, Israel, and the world thanks to you. This is why you're seeing him in this giddy moment right now. This is the kind of stuff coming. Now, I will say to you, and this is what we talked about before we went live, this is what ticks me off. And I don't want to change topics on you, but this is what ticks me off. If you want to put that tweet back up there, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And I know we don't want to go to this topic yet, but this is a bunch of crap. And let me tell you why this is a bunch of crap. Because, first of all, there's nothing Reagan-esque about Donald J. Trump, period, nor Churchillian. So go ahead and fill him up with that crap all you want, but that's a bunch of crap. But most importantly here is this. Thank you for your decision to strike the bloodiest regime in the region, to kill, maim, threaten, and terrorize with impunity, and did nothing. They subsidized Iran's terror nuclear ambitions, referring to Obama and Biden. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday, we had confirmation that sanctions have been lifted off of Iran, and they're able to openly sell their oil to China and make millions and millions and millions of dollars for that bloody regime that is still in power, that is the #1 state sponsor of terror around the world. So that is not a win for me personally, and I don't get it, to be quite honest. Right now, Iran has left the IAEA. It is official. It is done. It has not only went through their parliament, it is now signed, sealed, and delivered. So now we have no monitoring. We don't know where the enriched uranium is. We do not know the level of destruction, no matter who says what, until we get photos on the ground, boots on the ground to identify. And now we are allowing Iran to get enriched by selling their oil to China. So somebody tell me how. I'm sorry, Johnny, to switch on you, but this is what bugs me when we talk about how great everything is, because everything is transactional. The NATO joyride was transactional because they licked his boots before he got there. And then they treated him like the king. I'm sorry, and I'm an American. I'm thankful for what he said. I'm thankful. I'm grateful that he had an emotional moment with the Ukrainian, and I hope it changes his perspective in a week from now, in 2 weeks from now. I'm thankful that he spent time with Zelensky. But this is a transactional president who only cares about the deal. He instantly was back home, blasting CNN for their evil coverage, blasting the mayoral candidate in New York City who defeated Cuomo, and it's just going to be a communist overthrow of New York City happening in November. It was all gone right back to, no matter what your political perspective is, he went back just to shooting stuff off the cuff again. He got out of that environment, that emotional environment. So that's my only concern.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you, and I could sidetrack on every single one of those topics you just mentioned. CNN and the attack of the press, which he's doing, which I think is dangerous. I did a video on that this morning, the assault on the freedom of speech that is happening in the United States, including, wanting to look at people's social media before they come into the country. And
Neil Page, great comment. Sorry, Johnny. There was fear on the closure of the Straits of Hormuz. I think it's a valid point. Valid point.
Yeah, and so I don't know. Yeah, okay. So much to consider there. But
Anyway.
He certainly I think doesn't consider the overarching geopolitical implications of anything really. So what we heard about Iran from both the New York Times, the Rolling Stone had a piece on this, is that that Trump literally sent those B-2 bombers against Iran because he was watching Fox News a lot, was getting these vibes that Israel were doing really well in the strikes that were taking place, the conventional strikes, and essentially, by all accounts, wanted to have a piece of that. And he attacked Iran on vibes, rather than really considering the geopolitical implications of it. And I think that's the same here. So, like everything he considers is just a calculation about how great it makes him look. And yeah, so carry on. Go.
With that said, now something has refreshed in my mind from the NATO, and just get your opinion on this, because I think in general we have agreed that it turned out much more positive than it could have. We're definitely in agreement with that. We're in agreement that he was emotionally moved. We're in agreement that he saw some things there with camaraderie that hopefully will affect him going forward in the future. And we had, he's even tweeting about the 5%. So that's all positive. But he did make the statement that he looks forward to making a deal with Russia. And that was a public statement. And my concern there is that is really what he wants, is a deal with Russia, and we still don't have the rhetoric, or rhetoric was the incorrect word there. The placing in equal value of Ukraine with Russia. So it's like, I want to make a deal with Russia, but no, I want to bring peace to this war. I want to find a solution. I want to help. I want to work together. I want to do something. No, he wants to make a deal with Russia. It's even what he said on Air Force One heading over to the NATO meeting. And that's my concern. So I don't want to get the cart ahead of the horse here, because this, Papa Dutch sent this to me, one of my great supporters on my channel. And I really believe this is how Donald Trump does a lot of his foreign policy. By listening, he gets his 8-ball and he shakes it up and says, what should I do with Vladimir Putin? Oh, make a deal. Okay. This is,
yeah, no, and it's just the considerations are how does it make him look, but also what does the US gain materially? I mean, I don't mean geopolitically and talking on the long term. It's like, so for example, going back to NATO here, one statement he gave was like, we made a deal with Ukraine to take a vast amount of the land. Now I hope that he was just speaking off the cuff then, and that wasn't actually the case, of that they are going to help themselves a vast amount of Ukrainian land. But we made a deal with Ukraine to take a vast amount of the land they have for minerals. We need it. So again, seeing Ukraine there as just a means to an end for enrichment of itself, which is kind of, so going back to my original points about NATO. Sorry, I come back to you in a second.
Finish, because you something popped in my head.
Yeah, so when I was talking about like projecting and seeing all of these other leaders going to the NATO summit and acting on behalf of their people, their electorate, and then acting on behalf of Europe and on behalf of Ukraine and on behalf of national security, like that's an anathema to him. Like he, since he took over in January 2025, has generated 40% of his now present wealth. So he's a billionaire, and 40% of his wealth has been generated since January 20th. And this happened in his first tenure, where, you know, he broke the Emoluments Clause and the Hatch Act and all this kind of stuff, where he sees the presidency as a way to line his own pockets and to make himself seem greater and grander and be greater and grander in material wealth. And then he goes to NATO and sees all these people that's not their primary interest. Their primary interest is to work on behalf of their nations busily at a NATO summit. And he's like, oh, they're not here. He literally said, you know, it's not a rip-off NATO. No, these people are bloody there for, do you know what I mean? So like, he still has that though, where he wants to take advantage of Ukraine and take advantage of Russia, or like do a deal with Russia, because it's all about the moolah.
How many sanctions has the Trump administration placed on Russia since it came into office?
Square root of NAFL.
How much aid has the Trump administration initiated in support of Ukraine since they came into office?
The square root of NAFL.
Today, and this is geotagged and confirmed, Russia took control of the largest lithium deposit in Ukraine today. They now have full control of the lithium deposit outside of Shevchenko, all of it. 100% confirmed by Russia, confirmed by Ukraine. One of the most valuable pieces of dirt in all of Ukraine. Russia has it. Now, it doesn't mean Ukraine not going to push it back in 2 weeks, but I'm just saying, when he talks about ground and he talks about mineral deals, I don't really think he understands anything that he's talking about. Nothing.
Yeah.
Because it is, some of the most valuable pieces of ground are under Russian control. So, you know, if you're talking about a deal, let me ask you this, because it looks like our conversation is migrating to this. Do you feel that Ukraine is going to give up the 4 regions? We'll take Crimea off the table right now, but we can add Crimea. Do you feel?
No, it depends how
I agree with you.
Depends how you define give up, but no.
I agree with you.
I think at the most they'll de facto allow control of them as they stand now, as they do now. I mean, you know, but just what basically Zelensky has said, which is that de facto control, but not de jure.
I completely agree with you. Therefore, we are looking at a protracted war.
Yeah,
and
Russia
NATO came out. What?
Yeah,
wasn't it NATO that came out and said we're good in your support through 2027? Didn't that come out of this meeting, or somebody said it?
What do you mean? There is a report from NATO analysts that Russia are able to continue this war through to 2027.
Yes,
that was one thing.
Okay, so this is setting up, and we've already going into the 4th year to continue to be protracted. Protracted, lengthened. What's going to change this is technology and the race for it. Okay, just hear me out on this,
Mm-hmm.
because Russia can put more boots on the ground than Ukraine can. That's just a fact. And right now, reports coming out after the meeting with North Korea and Shoigu, not only is North Korean production plant and workers coming in to build shaheeds in Russia,
25,000. Yeah.
but additionally today, Kim Jong-un looking at sending an entire new batch of North Korean soldiers, up to 25,000, to reinforce Russia. And listen, they're not that bad of soldiers. They started off bad, but they started learning. And so you got the boots there. But Ukraine's technology and their development of the technology, it's like when Zelensky said, if you put the boots on the ground, and he said it just a few days ago, you're pushing on Sumy on us, and we're now pushing back and establishing some of our own pushback at Sumy. But you come at us with a soldier that has 2 legs. Well, we have 2 drones for that one soldier. So Ukraine is having to fight a little differently.
Yep.
And one thing that we have to watch is technology development. And I put my money on Ukraine on technology development. I just do.
So there's some really interesting. You're actually right. Let's just bottom out the North Korean thing. So 25,000 North Koreans are going to work in Yelabuga to help manufacture shaheeds. That's a problem. And to learn how to manufacture them, to then go back to North Korea and then manufacture in North Korea so they can export them to Russia. So there needs to be a concerted effort to blow the crap out of shaheed factories. End of. That has long been my #1 target. That needs to happen, but that's a worry. And then prior to that, there were 6,000 North Koreans that were pledged to come and help Russia, 1,000 sappers to demine in one presumed Kursk region, and 5,000 to be reconstruction workers. Many people are saying that's just 6,000 people that are going to be soldiers. So either way, that's bad. And then if there are any more that are being pledged today, then that's on top of what I've just mentioned. Now, the problem is, exactly as you say, is that these are perfectly able people. They have 2 legs, 2 arms, they've got all their organs, and they give them a gun. It means that the Ukrainians have to kill them, or in order to kind of stop them, and that is attritional. So if Russia, and I've long said this, do not underestimate the importance of North Korea in helping Russia. It prolongs the war. It completely prolongs the war, because then as many North Koreans as will be given to Russia is how long this war will last, I think, because that stops Russia exhausting themselves completely. It is a big problem.
I completely agree with you. And thank you guys. I'm watching the comments. Johnny's hosting the stream, so I'm able to watch all the comments go by from both of our channels. And you guys are putting out some phenomenally great comments and chatting as we're talking about this. I will tell you that it does extend the war. One of the concerns I have, and Gertis and I put a video out on it yesterday together, is the terror tactics that Russia is using inside Ukraine. The Ukrainians need to get a cap on that, and I'm talking about the purchases of these mopeds and just how much the FSB is working inside Ukraine to disrupt soldiers' lives. So that, I think, if I was to have 2 or 3 main things that I would love for Ukraine to focus on, and if I'm thinking it, for sure they're thinking it. Okay, not that my thoughts are right, but I mean they're ahead of us, is what I'm saying there. Johnny, I completely agree with you. We've got to take out the shaheed factories, guys, because we're talking about increasing them more and more. And it's not just the amount of armament that they can carry, and they're getting faster and they're going higher and they're harder to take out. They're only going to get better. That's just the way it is. Fortunately, we've got some glide bombs now that are available to Ukraine. They're making adjustments. All of that's going to happen. So we need to take out, to the best of our ability, shaheed factories, because they're a real problem. I'm just going to be honest with you. They are a tremendous problem. And a lot of the damage you guys are seeing Yes, you will see the one building, 9 floors, leveled to the ground, and it was a Iskander coming in, or a ballistic missile, or a KN-23 from North Korea that's been modified and doing phenomenal now. But a lot of just the general damage you'll see where people are killed and there's just buildings burning, that's all shaheeds. That's not missiles. That's how much stuff they're bringing in, and they're overwhelming.
And they're
So
getting more success with the shaheeds because they're using
no
them
question,
closer to the front line.
they're carpet bombing with them. That's what they're
Yeah,
doing.
which is.
But let me just say this.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
Ukraine, let's pound the shaheeds manufacturing to the best of our ability, but also let's work internally the best we can to stabilize this internal security for our soldiers and our civilians the best we can. And I know that's a tough battle to fight, but any way we can reassure insight, because people right now, I mean, they're afraid to walk near a military office. They're afraid to, and it's not about being grabbed off the street. I'm just talking, they're concerned, like my friends that are older that are not going to be drafted or mobilized. They go like, I don't even want to walk near because I don't know if somebody's walking around carrying, a secret agent with a bomb, or they've hired somebody. It's destabilizing internally in Ukraine a little bit. And then we see all the attacks on our soldiers. They're purchasing things through OLX, which is like an eBay, guys. And they purchase this to help their unit. They go pick it up. Boom. We lose a guy, one guy's wounded, and it's happening over and over and over. And you're only seeing a few of the examples, but it's out there a lot to destabilize the morale. So I really want Ukraine, and I know they will, focus on building the morale of their military, and honor them, which they do, but more and more and more, and then hit those targets.
Yeah, yes. So those Shahed drones, as you say, are a big problem. They're using them close to the front line, more as a kind of frontline form of artillery, in a sense. But well, nearer the front line, as in places like Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, Druzhkivka, just behind like the Chasiv Yar area, that semicircle of cities. That means that the Ukrainians. Yeah, Konstantinivka as well. So if you send a Shahed to Lviv or to Kiev, you've got like 6 hours to shoot that bad boy out of the sky. And so the interception rates are generally better. If you send it to Kramatorsk, then that's just 10, 20, 30 kilometers past a contact line these days, or whatever. You don't have long to shoot it down. And so you generally can't. And you don't have the decent air defenses around there because it's that much closer to the front line. So they are using them very successfully against those sort of cities and causing quite a lot of destruction, which means that, unless you can really improve your ability to shoot them down in those kind of contexts, then the best thing to do is to, prevention's better than cure. So you need to prevent the Russians from sending them. But as someone said, I think someone said earlier in the thread that, it should be easy to take out those factories or they already have, or something like that. No. They've tried a number of these places and they've hit Yelabuga a number of times, so they haven't really done much damage. I'm hoping that maybe my hopium leads me to speculate that they're just getting ready for the Hrim 2 ballistic missile or something like that, or some kind of scaled up production of some much more effective long range weapon, and then they're just going to wait until they got enough of them and just completely overwhelm somewhere like Yelabuga, because sending over 5 Lyuti drones or something like that, it just doesn't really seem to touch the side. You need to flood somewhere like Yelabuga with like 150 munitions, just like Russia did the other day with Kiev, when they sent 472. No, it wasn't that night. It's when they sent like 300 something, and they sent 175 against Kiev. And like that is your overwhelming of one place. You do that to Yelabuga stops making Shaheeds. But I don't know. I obviously don't make the decisions, do I? So there'll be a reason why they haven't been able to do that. But
Carolyn Levitt was just asked in a press conference, is the United States sending more air defense systems? And she would not commit yes. Just happening.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right, and I'll tell you, I feel that the operations won't come only long distance, as you're saying, like Ukraine is piling up and piling up. I think they use covert actions like they did in Operation Spiderweb. There's more things planned like that. and they'll be much more effective.
Yeah, you're probably right, actually, to take
they're
out someone like that.
Yes, they're there. The Ukrainians are there. They're prepping. There are operations ready to go, and it's like the timing of Operation Spiderweb was perfect. 18 months of planning, and the window of opportunity to pull it off was perfect. And there are multiple more operations that Ukraine has, but they're limited. So they have to make sure they don't have a failure and give themselves the best opportunity. So I trust those guys and the operations they have planned. They're incredible what they can do, what they've planned. And it's almost as if, I go back to the debacle in the White House when Zelensky was being berated. And the entire time he's sitting there and he knew Operation Spiderweb was coming. He knew it. And Ukraine, he does. We've used this phrase a lot, but the reality is Zelensky does have a lot more cards, and Ukraine has a lot more cards. And Zelensky is a person that knows how to represent his nation, that goes 24/7, exhausted. And I know, you get frustrated politically in wartime, and people won't agree, or they agree, and mad one day and not mad the next. And this needs to be different. Man, can you imagine the pressure that he has lived under this entire war? Guys, he doesn't just, if he goes to a meeting, he doesn't get on the airplane in Kyiv and fly out. He rides a 12-hour train to Poland so he can get on his plane and go somewhere. It's unbelievable, his schedule, and I just support him. Doesn't mean he does everything right, but he's doing a phenomenal job, and we support him.
Busiest, most stressed politician, I think, in the world.
Unbelievable, and he still keeps standing and hanging on. One of my major concerns, and Ukraine has now made it public on the multiple attempts on his life that have been thwarted through Ukrainian Secret Service, through the SBU that have done that to protect him, and also Polish guys have assisted in protecting him in Poland. My concern is if we have something, of that nature happen, and because I know Russia's trying to take him out. There's no question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not one who's prone to depression. So I'm luckily, my biology and my brain are organized in such a way that I'm not only exceptionally good looking, but I also don't get depression. But I am up and down on Ukraine in terms of like some.
Is Johnny Pierce good looking?
This is like
not a snowball's chance in hell.
This is my reverse self-deprecating.
Is Johnny Pierce? Hold on. Is Johnny Pierce the best tippler in the world?
I could probably.
Johnny Pierce consumes more alcohol annually than the entire nation of Tanzania. Wow, JP.
Can I just say that this is alcohol-free Guinness, by the way. So, although my partner just opened the door and she gave me a nice glass of Pinot Noir, so I have best of both worlds. Right. So, but when it comes to the war in Ukraine, I am up and down like a yo-yo. Like I'm like, oh, this is just a bad period for Ukraine, and then I'm like, oh no, this is cool. And obviously it's going to depend a lot on what strikes take place on any given day, and what big missions are completed, or what's going on the front line, or then geopolitically, or what Trump says. Now, right now, today, I feel pretty good, actually. And I said this to you before we came live. I'm like, I'm in a pretty good place. Why am I in a good place? Well, NATO was a success in all the ways that we've already laid out. Challenges as well. Depends what happens when he goes back, all that kind of stuff. Okay. In terms of what's going on the front lines, Sumy is looking pretty good. So this was Russia's
definitely looking better. Yes.
Yeah. Russia's major offensive, apparently 50,000 Russians there, and the Ukrainians, they might even have put some more units in there today. Some mentioning that maybe 3 more units have gone up there, but basically they are pushing the Russians back there. Now that's pretty cool. Down in Pokrovsk, Konstantinivka, okay, but okay, at least there are some positives to take from that, and I think when they acquit themselves, and really want to and can put enough people in the right places, then Ukraine can make a difference on the front line. But it's about having enough people, right? I wonder how many reserves, but anyway, that's another question.
Just, you have to remember that, Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka outside of Chasiv Yar, that's the Donetsk Oblast, Donetsk region. But when you start to speak about places like Dnipro or Sumy, those are even additional regions which Russia is now threatening. I mean, they're physically on the ground, and it's very important that Ukraine pushes them back in that Sumy Oblast, because it's not, I hope you guys understand, because we want to educate you and share truth the best we can and factually, but it's not Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and of course not Crimea. You're talking about the Sumy region, and you're talking about Dnipropetrovsk region. So this is now 2 more regions, and we know what Russia is threatening. You don't take our deal, it's only going to get worse for you. If it's not 5 regions, it's going to be 7 regions, whatever. That's their rhetoric that they will continue to spew. So it's very important up there where Johnny's on that map that Ukraine continue to defend Sumy.
And also because Sumy city is a major city, right?
Yes, you've
Ukraine.
been there.
And it is threatened by the Russians. It's not that they want to take Sumy, that they have any, yeah, they would like to, but they don't have any realistic intentions of actually taking Sumy, as far as I understand it. But what they want to do is flatten it with artillery. So they can get to the top of this forested area, then they can, start reaching with their artillery. And so the Ukrainians need to push them back, because otherwise lots of people in Sumy start dying.
They just want to siege it and wage terror and destruction. That's what they do.
So,
and I will tell you guys, let me give you an inside track here. If you zoom out that map, Johnny, so we can just see all of Ukraine a little bit there. And you guys see where Sumy is up there in the northeast. And you would look at that logically and where Johnny's little cursor is, and you would say, okay, man, that must be like, okay, so that's very Russian type city because it's so close to the Russian border. And that would be 100% wrong. Sumy is one of the most beautiful Ukrainian cities. It's got Ukrainian architecture. I've spent a lot of time in Sumy. I've taken Johnny to Sumy and Pierre to Sumy. Everything's Ukrainian language, and it's like, really, it's so Ukrainian, much more than even places that would be in Central and West. You go, okay, well, this could be more Ukrainian here. No, so it's good to understand that. Like, there's no question. We all know the answer to this, preaching to the choir, but Sumy is Ukraine. Just like Crimea is Ukraine, and Donetsk is Ukraine, and Lugansk is Ukraine. Sumy is Ukraine, but it's very Ukrainian, very Ukrainian. It's beautiful, beautiful. It's one of my favorite cities in Ukraine, and I think you enjoyed your time there.
Yeah. So what do I have? So why am I happy? So Sumy that's got my tail up a little bit. We've got guided glide bombs, like you mentioned, and there is a claim
60-kilometer range.
There's a claim that they actually used them, or there's some kind of equivalent, because I shared some footage of a UMPK kit on a FAB bomb, which looks like maybe what was talked about this week as being this new bomb, but that's supposed to be still in the prototype stage. Anyway, so they've got more planes coming through, and they're getting, Sumy area is a good example. They're getting air parity there, where they're starting to pummel the Russians with guided glide bombs, the AASM French hammer bombs, the GBU 62s, the GBU 38s and 39s again from the Americans. Okay, so guided glide bombs, and if they can make their own at scale, that's looking good. Okay, aviation. Then we've got Emmanuel Macron talking about maybe some more Mirage 2000s coming on. We've got F-16s. Today we heard that the Dutch have given another bunch of F-16s to Romania for €1, I think. 16 F-16s to train on. That's going to help the Ukrainians training in Romania. So, the air situation is looking like it's going to improve in Ukraine's favor. Then we've got all these new weapons. So today as well, well, not new weapons. Let's look at this. We have the TB2 now started. I reported this the other day that TB2s are starting to be seen again. So they've maybe, I don't know whether they've been adapted or any way, but if they're starting to be used in an offensive manner with some weapons on, then that's a good sign. We are seeing the guided glide bombs, as mentioned, be used to take out a vast number of targets right across the front line, and that's excellent news. We're seeing so here we have this. I mean, this is a whole. I just saw this video today, right? This afternoon. Now, this is an S-400. This is the best air defense system they have. Now, here, I don't know what they're using to take these out, but they are taking all the most of the components of this whole system out, from the launchers to the radar to, I think, the command post.
What do you mean? What they're taking it out with? What do you think's flying to it?
Well, I know, but exactly what kind of drone here, and,
Okay,
and
yeah.
you know, just the geekier details of that.
Okay,
but
gotcha.
obviously drones. So you know, that's looking good. Then we've got this came out today, which is I don't know where this is, but it's the first known use. Oh, occupied Luhansk somewhere. The first known use of the Peklo drone. So the Peklo drone is like a rocket drone or missile drone. That has been talked about quite a bit. They're supposed to be sort of scaling them up and whatnot, and they probably have been used way more than we know inside Russia. But now we see parts of it like lying near to the target that was hit. These can have a range of 700 kilometers and can go 700 kilometers an hour. These are, you know, this strike reportedly destroyed a river crossing over the Ida and damaged a pumping station. Blah blah blah. So you've got the you've got the, you know, these drones, and we hear that Germany is going to be funding some of these distance munitions. They are already funding them. You've got the HRIM-2 ballistic missiles that apparently they're scaling up. If they can get ballistic missiles, and they're talking about they've got 300 kilometer, but they can maybe get them to 500 kilometers. If they can start hitting all of the air bases in a 500 kilometer range, then, you know, things start right, this is good. I'm feeling good about this. It's new weapons coming online. There's loads of stuff I've seen today as well in terms of drones. So I shared a drone that was, or a unit that was using drones to throw nets on other drones. So the Russians have done this.
Oh, yeah.
Ukrainians are now doing it. And I saw a whole video where they took out like literally like 40 drones with nets or something. Here, I don't know if you've seen this. This is another one. Some kind of fishing line is being used here. I don't know if you've seen this. So they dangle a fishing line, and it's obviously not so attached to the drone that it will tug the drone that's dropping it down. But they are dangling a fishing line that gets caught in the propellers, and it's such a simple thing, and it just throws them, and those drones go down. And we've got a whole video of this. Now, of course, anything like this that the Ukrainians do, the Russians can do as well, right? That's really simple stuff. But there are lots of things that I'm seeing whereby the Ukrainians are just having success with a.
There are things happening you won't see right now. You won't see for months. They won't let the video out. You guys haven't seen anything yet. Just wait. I'm telling you, your jaw's gonna be dropping off the ground come October, Johnny. Like, oh my goodness, this is what they're doing, and this is why Zelensky said, okay, you keep sending us one soldier, we're going to have 2 drones for each leg. And that's how Ukraine, you see, Ukraine is modifying how they're waging war right now. And it takes time to transition that. It takes resources to transition that. And it takes, money to transition that. So they're working on that. But at the same time, they're doing it. And it's like when the first shotgun videos started coming out with the drones. All right. It's our team. It's our team that was delivering the tubes. We worked with it's all public information now. We worked with them for months and months and months, and it was Zhenya and all of our team there in central Ukraine manufacturing those tubes and sending to them for testing. We were watching the shotgun drones shoot other drones out months before it ever hit anything public. So I'm telling you guys, trust me, it's coming. And you're going to be so proud of the Ukrainians and their ingenuity. And like you said, to be fair, Russia is doing the very, very, very same thing.
What gives me a little bit of good news, if it's true that the Ukrainians have a lot of spare capacity for manufacturing. This is what Zelensky keeps saying. It's like, give us more money. I know it sounds like give, but give us more money and we can reach our potential. And then you've got all of these other nations, like Denmark's just said this, that we're going to co-production with you. So they're now localizing production, but instead of localizing, say, a Rheinmetall piece of kit in Ukraine and building it in Ukraine, they're now localizing Ukrainian kit and building it in places like Denmark. The UK is doing this as well. So they're taking like good drones that have got good, form and whatnot, and they're starting. We as allies are getting together with Ukraine and say, right, let's make this for you guys back at home. And so that when you look at Russia, there are claims that Russia's defense industry is now maxed, right? So several analysts I've looked at said there really isn't much headroom for them to go any further. They're 24/7ing, they're producing, they've got a labor shortage.
This is why they're partnering with North Korea.
Exactly. Yeah. That's their option, is like, how can we? Yeah. But with Ukraine, they're saying we've got this extra potential. Give us the money, and we can build more stuff. And then you've got the other nations building their stuff abroad as well. So there's more scope for ramping up with Ukraine.
And this brings us right back around to where we started. This is my concern with how we are now treating Iran, and it could change by tomorrow. Okay, guys, that's just the way it is. But the reality is, now the Trump administration talking about floating money to Iran to help them build their infrastructure. There's Dylan Burns. Ukrainian innovation knows no bounds because ones will do anything to defend their homeland. Home knows no bounds. Exactly, Dylan. Dylan's gonna be on with me soon.
Dylan, please reach out. Let's have a co-stream as well, mate. I'd love to.
Dylan, listen,
my man.
I respect any person in media that will help Ukraine, but I deeply respect any person that has went from behind the camera into the country. And I can say that Johnny Pierce has done it even with his physical condition of MS, and rolled the front line like a hero multiple times. And Dylan Burns goes and embeds and brings back reality. So I have deep respect. I do the same. So have deep respect for Dylan and you, Johnny, and any guy that, and I'm appreciative for all that helps. But it'll change you when you get in there. And that kind of goes back to when Trump heard that story yesterday. I think it affected him a little bit. So we'll see what unfolds from that. But my concern is when you start talking about Russia peaking out on their ability to produce. So when now you have deals happening and we begin to enrich, you're welcome, Dylan. When you have deals that begin to enrich terroristic nations at what level, and I don't want to sit here and judge whatever level that is, but we know Hezbollah, the proxies, and the relationship with the Houthis, it's obvious that there are evil intentions in certain facets, and there's lots of Iranian people that need to be liberated and that country made new again and get rid of that Ayatollah. But when you start to enrich them and they have agreements with Russia, and it's not military agreements, but it's economic agreements. Now you can start seeing partnerships here, and it may not be they're manufacturing drones, but maybe they're manufacturing some other components or necessities, and there's money flowing back and forth. And instead of helping bring peace to the war in Ukraine by defeating Russia, that's how peace comes, defeat them and have Russia implode from within. We're empowering them. We're putting money. That's just my view on it.
That's what happens when you have this short-term transactional. When I mean short-term, I mean like almost geographically short-term transactional understanding, but you don't have the overarching geopolitical understanding. Like Trump, I'm sorry, he's just not knowledgeable enough on how the world works, on how the world is this very complex geopolitical jigsaw puzzle. And he just looks at Iran in this case, and thinks, well, how much benefit can I get out of this interaction for us immediately, rather than playing a 20-year game and saying, well, no, we can't just enrich. we can all make some money off oil going to Iran or from Iran to China, whatever. But actually, that might not be the most important thing. We need to think in layers and layers. And
you have to think ahead. And while I'm at it, while I got Dylan on my mind, Dylan is releasing a new documentary, I think this weekend, or it is imminent in the next few days, of his most recent work in Ukraine there. So make sure you guys, if you haven't subscribed to Dylan Burns TV, make sure you do. And all I've heard is it's going to be amazing, and we'll get Dylan on and talk about it. And I know you will as well, Johnny. So it's incredible.
I'd love to. Yeah,
yes.
I'd love to.
So we'll see. We'll see. I'm thankful. I'm thankful for what we take the wins when we can take them, but looking long term, I'm concerned.
And the other positive here that I haven't mentioned, Russia, a very small economy compared to the EU, says Bjorn Gustafsson. But actually, it's a fact that Russia are, and I know Ukraine are teetering economically as well. They're not in a good place, but they have the support of a much greater network that hopefully won't let them go from teetering to complete implosion. But Russia is in, I know people have been talking about this for 3 years, like, oh, how close Russia is to economic collapse. But actually, there are so many indicators to say that, you know, they've really chomped through their sovereign wealth fund. They are, all the indicators are looking pretty terrible. They're starting to make acquisitions, like forced acquisitions of corporate entities in Russia. The debt is going through the roof. The repos and bonds and every indicator is that Russia is in some economic trouble. And that the deep frustration I have is that had Trump, he had two choices: either go the appeasement route or go hard on Russia. He went the appeasement route. If he went hard on Russia, I think would have capitulated by now. If Russia had had 5 months of what Trump claimed that he could do, which is, I'm going to hit them so hard with sanctions and give more weapons to Ukraine if they drag their feet. Well, they did drag their feet and you did nothing. But if you had done what you had said, Russia, I'm pretty sure would be in all sorts of trouble right now.
I completely agree with that. And, you know, I remain hopeful. But I tell you what, my hope is not in Donald Trump. My hope is in Ukraine, and my belief is in Ukraine. And I still believe that good defeats evil. And I believe, and I know that doesn't maybe align with your planets there or whatever, Johnny, but I just believe that truth wins out in the end. And I'm more hopeful today than ever, because I really believe that Ukraine is getting stronger technologically, and it's going to come down to that. And they have the ability to see ahead. I don't know about you, man, but if this is a boxing match, you know, there's 12 rounds or 15 rounds in the heavyweight match, and it ain't over till that last bell rings. And here in America, we have a saying, you know, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. Do you know that saying, JP?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, let me tell you something. She's not even warming up.
Yeah.
Ukraine's coming.
Yeah. I really hope that is, of course, I hope that's true. So yeah, fingers crossed for that. Should we have a quick pop through the very kind?
Please do, because I've got to get to an appointment.
Okie dokie.
And I just want to say, before we start doing that, thank you to everybody watching and being a part of this. We appreciate all of you so much, and thank you. Yeah.
One thing I do want to say just before we go to the thanks, I do worry about what the US gave away to Lukashenko. And I think there's a lot of this normalizing going on, like we've seen with Russia. And indeed, you could argue with Iran already, whereby they it was great that 14.
Do you want to open up this topic right now when you're trying to sign off? Are you kidding me? If you can understand the Russian, when they're walking in there, Lukashenko is praising how good my wonderful friends are. I haven't seen you in so long. Come here and give me a hug. We've been chatting and talking. It's nothing but a love fest. It's disgusting. And that's why I say be very careful about getting overhyped about Trump's words, because he was emotionally moved. we're thankful for it, but now we're back to reality. He's screaming about Democrats gave away all the intelligence, and that's the problem there. And we got a socialist, communist Muslim that's going to be the mayor of New York, and AOC needs to be the vice president, and this one needs to be the president, and just destroy America.
If you actually look at what Zoran Mumdi did in New York to get that vote, I mean, it's a really good lesson to people. Like, go and speak to the electorate. He went and spoke to the electorate, said, what is it that most concerns you? And they said the cost of living, the rent is too high, blah blah blah. And he went, right, he went away, and then he tailored, he's responding to what the people want. And so people are saying, oh, some Muslims going to be blah blah blah. These are just a decent, if you ever hear him speak, he's a pretty decent bloke. And he's gone and he walks out in the street, and he did that 10-kilometer walk through New York, and he was speaking to everyone. And it's like, if you want to be a populist even leader, then you need to connect with your electorate. And he went and did that. Andrew Cuomo didn't, and he won the election. And interestingly, so you get people like Charlie Kirk saying, oh, it's going to be a crazy like Muslim place, and all these like immigrants have voted for him. Do you know what won in the election predominantly? Richer white people. So the demographic that overwhelmingly voted for Zoran Mumdi were people earning over a certain amount who are white. So it's absolute nonsense what loads of people are saying. Anyway.
No matter what, you wonderful people, and I love all of you very much on both channels, and I know you don't believe it, and that's okay. But Gertis is not a MAGA, and Gertis does not like Trump, no matter what he says. I'm telling you.
I know that's a bone of contention for me.
We work every day. He doesn't. And last night, when this information come out, it was about 11:30. I called him, and I said, dude, did you just see what happened in New York City?
Mamdani, yeah.
He says, yeah. He says, let me tell you something. He goes, Trump has until the midterm, and you're going to see a revolution in this country. So
yeah, interesting.
I'm telling you. So we're going to see more and more and more of this, because people are speaking. And you know what? I don't agree with everything they say, but I agree with their right to speak. I can tell you that. But I can tell you one thing. I definitely don't agree with most of the crap coming out of the White House. And if you're going to put a daggone massive flagpole in the front of the White House, which honestly I'm not opposed to, although we had a big, beautiful flag
and
already.
They paved over the Rose Garden.
Hold on a second. Let me rant. You can't even put it in the center. You put it off to the side. It looks ridiculous. I mean, my mother-in-law, who's struggling with dementia, would have put it in the middle of the yard. Come on. So it's just, all right, I'm done. I'm done.
By the way, and just before I do start the thanks, I keep saying this. One other thing I'm happy about that Ukraine has been done, I meant to mention this earlier, sorry, the strikes on the trains. Loads of trains are being taken out down in Zaporizhia, even into the top of Crimea, Chonhar sort of area, but Tokmak particularly. Loads of trains being hit, and that is a good sign that they are able to get that distance with those kind of drones and do what they are doing. I think is a really good sign for Ukraine. You start messing around with the trains, and lots of people saying, why hasn't this been happening for the last 3 years? Okay, but it's happening now, and I think that's a good sign. Anyway, Petra Olson, thank you very much on behalf of Greg. Thank you, Johnny Christiansen, super appreciated.
Thank you.
Richard Bennett, thank you, matey. Appreciate that. So I'm going quite quickly through these. Johnny Nevregard, that's on behalf of Greg there. Greg, this one, Stevens, for you as well. So now we feel a bit positive again. Next time Trump has a long, friendly phone call from Putin, well, yeah. Well, if he only agrees to sell the Patriots to Ukraine, I shall not complain. Yeah, that would be nice if he can at least sell them.
Pause on that one before you go. Richard Bennett gifting an ATP Geopolitics. No, you can keep going. But all I wanted to say was another thing that can make you feel, have some positivity coming out of the NATO meeting is it was just a week prior that Zelensky was heading to the G7 to meet with Trump, and Trump left. So we have to look at, okay, we've made some move in a week. It's good. Agreed. Kevin Force, thanks, mate. You're always a legend. Joe Hales as well, actually. Thank you so much, Joe. What's the opinion that BB paid Trump Nondo those strikes?
I'm not quite sure exactly what you mean, but obviously
he's talking about Bibi
yeah.
Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this, Joe Hales. Isn't it quite interesting that today Donald Trump, the president of the United States, advocating into the internal judicial system of Israel, telling them to drop all charges against Bibi.
Yeah, that
So,
I find
but
that.
let's don't talk about meddling in other nations. So
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Stephen. Really, really kind of you. Really appreciate that. Adam Rounds, on behalf of you, Greg, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And Michael Viewchart, super generous as you always are, my man. And great work from Stephen Bendel there. So here we have Daryl for you, JP, Greg. Love listening. Lots of games being played here. Yeah, isn't there just? And Trump couldn't win a game of tiddlywinks. Putin's pulling the puppet strings via Heritage and Dugin. Yeah, agree that. Without what we see is smoke and mirrors. I'm hopeful that NATO has changed things, but I do think probably he will mitigate a lot of what he has said with a change of direction somewhat over the next few days and weeks. But hopefully he has learned something, and he's certainly got a better view of Zelensky and European leaders than he did. And I don't know that can be convinced otherwise so easily. Like they can't convince him out of his experiences. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, but then it depends how quickly memory fades. And some people saying that outbreak of swearing, and my dad's got dementia, and I can say, yes, I agree with this. That outbreak of swearing is a lack of veto, and he doesn't have the veto like he used to, maybe, and that could be a sign of dementia. It's armchair psychologizing, and but there you go. It could be. Okay. Dunk on you. That's for you. Working but listening.
Well, he's not only that, he also was mod, and he grabbed a good one there. Thanks on that, Dunk. I saw that.
Dunk on you as well with loads of memberships there, so total edge. F Oink, decentralization reduces the risk of supply line disruption. Yes, and this is something I haven't talked so much about, but I keep talking about the advantages of making things in Ukraine, the advantages of making things back at home, depending on who you are and how you want to spend your money. It can be cheaper. You can, $1 million is going to get you twice as much stuff in Ukraine, and you're going to put tax dollars in Ukraine's hands so that it will stimulate their industry. But from your own taxpayer's point of view, if you spend that money in your own country, that's going to stimulate your own economy, and you'll get tax dollars yourself. But also, if you have both, manufacturing of drones, a co-production of drones, both existing in both Ukraine and in, say, Denmark or the UK, then you've got a supply line decentralization, which means that things can't get ruined so easily if something's blown up or there are issues, whatever. So that's a really good point. Thanks.
Metallica, I see your chat in there supporting Sternyenko. Very good. Rock solid. I love
so he's Sternyenko. Yeah.
Richard
Bennett, thank you very much, mate. Again, Julian Rossiter, legend. Do you think the frozen Russian assets will ever be used to help Ukraine? Well, they are being used right now.
They are being used.
But it's whether you give over the original assets rather than just the profits. And I'm actually a little bit split on this. I know lots of people have said 300 billion, just give it to them straight away. But then you're done and dusted. That's it. You ain't going. There's no more you can get from that. But if you can just constantly skim off the profits, then there's a greater sustainability, and you've got the 300 billion left over. So at the end of the war, you can use that for reparations. Do you know what I mean? So I can see arguments both ways, and of course you got the legal ramifications of using the original 300 billion. So but I know that if you gave 300 billion straight away, then that would be fabulous. But of course, how quickly can you turn? See, another issue might be that if you're using the profits from the frozen Russian assets, and that's liquid, right? But the assets themselves aren't necessarily things that you can just turn into money straight away. I don't know enough here, but it could be that it's just easier to give the profits rather than the assets themselves, and legal ramifications. What's the reason for the delay? Legal issues or lack of solidarity in the West? There's a lack of solidarity because of the legal issues and because of the impact on the economy as well. So people, they are worried that if they the use of frozen Russian assets, then it will stop investment because people will be too afraid to invest in Europe just in case they get their stuff stolen, stuff like that. But thank you, Julian. Really appreciate that. Rudy Hermans, thank you. What do you think will happen if Russia if it collapses? That's the $1 million question, and so many people have cast their opinion on that as to whether, you know,
it's not in the cards short term, not yet.
No,
there's gonna have to be some internal breakage, and I know Ukraine is working toward that. I hope other nations are working towards that as well. But they've got some reserves, guys. They do. But if it fell, you would see similar activity as to what happened at the end of the Soviet Union. I don't think we would have a vacuum of power, but it would be pretty chaotic. I guess that's my best way to say it, because it's not in the car. It's not going to happen tomorrow. Let's just leave it at that. It's not going to happen next week. It would branch out, because you have Russia so big and it's so ethnically diverse, and the difference between the West and the East it's like different planets. I mean, it's not really simple dealing with Russia, to be quite honest, as we all.
And you've got the oligarchs and the Saviki.
Correct.
So
it's chaos. I will say this also. F point coming in. JP, don't forget the trust damage. Now it's Russian assets. Who's next? And I also saw in my chat, just a question went by, Greg. When are you going to be back? I'm sure the soldiers miss you. I'm planning to be back in Ukraine in about 1 month, the end of July. So
happy days. Well, good luck to you. Yeah, just on the collapse, I'm not as pessimistic as some. Obviously, the big concern is nuclear warheads and whatnot, and that's what has potentially caused the Americans under the Biden administration, and probably under the Trump administration as well, to be cautious about allowing Ukraine to win too much. Because if Russia lost, then they have to concern themselves with what happens with the nukes, and that's something they don't really want to deal with. So that is that. Thank you very much to the amazing people in the live chat. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to people who help out the channels. Really appreciate. So much more to talk about. For example, just as one thing, and we're going to go now, so we're not going to talk about this, but take this, for example. Putin is, and this is coming from the Daily Mail, which is normally like, let's demonize immigrants and make sure that they are to blame for all the woes of the world. But here they're saying Putin is pushing migrants to Britain in an attempt to overwhelm borders, insiders claim, which is what we've seen in Poland and Finland. And so really interesting that's something I want to talk about, and I'll look into. Oh, look, I'm bigger than you. No, I'm not. Okay, sorry, that's the right size. So anyway, so much more to talk about, but you need to go and do what you need to do, Greg. I need to go and make sure that my partner remembers exactly who I am.
As I would say with Nat King Cole, you're unforgettable.
I hope it's for all the right reasons. Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
Too. Okay, well, what are your last words?
Let me answer Linda H's question. Yeah, I talked about that earlier, Linda. Russia's still working that way to hurt Ukrainian soldiers, but they're getting a hand on it. My last words are, let's keep fighting, guys. I can tell you a lot of drones in the air right now over Ukraine, and we'll see what unfolds from that, and we fight on every day.
Absolutely. I am somewhat positive at the moment, but these things can change on a dime, can't they?
You guys watched for Johnny's next video after his partner remembers what he looks like in his name, and let's hope the positivity keeps rolling. Yeah, it's good to feel a little bit positive. So yeah, let's hope that remains. Unfortunately, it can be blasted out the water by a heavy night of 400-500 drones hitting Ukraine. So let's hope that doesn't happen. And thank you to everybody. Thank you to all the moderators. Thank you to everybody taking time out of your day or night or morning, wherever you're at, to be in here, and we all work together and learn together and fight together. So thank you all.
Absolutely. Slava Ukraini.
Geroim slava, do razem do перемога, дорогой.
That's what I would have said.
Будь ласка.
And that. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Greg. Big love. See you later.
Bye-bye.